Proverbs chapter 12. Again, we're kind of, at least for the time being, out of the longer, more sermon-like Proverbs and into the more statement. So we'll have a lot of verses that the whole proverb is in one verse. We saw that last week and it'll continue this week. So Proverbs chapter 12 verse 1 says, "Whoever loves instruction loves knowledge, but he who hates correction is stupid." I was always told by my mother that was a bad word. That was not a nice word. Well, maybe it isn't supposed to be in my vocabulary, Mom, but it's in the Bible. So another word would be ignorant. It has to do with how you respond to correction, obviously. So if you love instruction, then you love knowledge. It goes hand in hand. Because if you're willing to read the instructions, then you have the knowledge to be able to, put something together. Every man I know, and if I'm not, maybe I shouldn't speak for every man, but I know I have opened up boxes and just started putting things together, and then you don't know where this part is supposed to go, and it doesn't look like it should fit here. And it's always fun when you have leftovers, and you just assume the manufacturer put a few extra in there for you and hope that it doesn't fall apart. So, but if you love instruction, then you love knowledge. In other words, you treasure it. You're gonna be willing to accept it. But if you hate correction, and often for me, that's what instructions are. They're correction. I open the box, I start getting after it, and then I have to go back to the instructions, and it's correcting the path that I took to begin with. So a good man obtains favor from the Lord, but a man of wicked intentions he will condemn. Again, if you're good and your intentions are good, you're going to have favor from the Lord. You're going to have favor from the Lord because you're going to seek the Lord when you make your decisions, or as we'll see, especially getting into chapter 13, talks a bit about being slow to speak and being quiet more than you actually talk. And so a man of good intent, or a good man, obtains favor from the Lord. But a man of wicked intentions he will condemn. A man is not established by wickedness, but the root of righteousness cannot be moved. And so if your intent in your life is to be righteous before God, then you have a foundation. You have a grasp. A plant that, I don't know if you've ever pulled up some plants that have really deep, like tap roots. And it's always a surprise to get the whole root. You know how deep they go. I pulled one up the other day, and I was surprised the whole thing came out, and it was, a couple feet long. And the plant I was pulling on was only not even half the root. So, and it was a good thick root. It just happened to not be in great soil that it could really hold into. But it took a lot of effort to pull that out. Then you have others that just have kind of surface roots and don't really get very deep, and you can grab a hold of those and pull them out pretty easily. And, so a man is not established in wickedness. You can think that you're established. You can think you're in control. You have life in hand, but if it's established, or you try to establish on wickedness, it's like building on the sand. Jesus used that analogy of a wise man building on a rock, on a good, solid foundation, and a foolish man building on sand that would just wash away with the first storm. So we need to keep that in mind. If wickedness is how we think we have to get ahead, you're not really going to get ahead. Sooner or later, it's going to get pulled out from you. An excellent wife is the crown of her husband, but she who causes shame is like rottenness in his bones. The thoughts of the righteous are right, but the counsels of the wicked are deceitful. The words of the wicked are lie in wait for blood, but the mouth of the upright will deliver them. And so, not sure why they want to run that all together, but an excellent wife is the crown of her husband. So a wife who's not tearing her husband down, who's not putting him down, who's not arguing with him, even if there's something to necessarily argue about. You're not arguing in front of other people. You're there to support and to build your husband up in it, and that goes both ways. You don't want to tear down your wife either. But in this instance, Solomon is kind of picking at the wife, but it's not really a pick. Is an excellent wife is the crown of her husband. He likes to have her with him. He's not afraid to have her around his friends. He's not afraid to take her out in public. You know, I've seen women behave badly in public and kind of watch their husbands just kind of fade into the background because he knows there's no stopping them, and they're going to make themselves look bad. You might as well not, get as far from that as you can, and not be a part of it, or not be accused of being a part of it. And so, it brings honor to her husband, and he likes to have her around. And she who causes shame is like rottenness in his bones. You need to get rid of it. I don't want to be a part of it. I don't want to be known to be your husband. That kind of attitude. And again, I've seen that. The thoughts of the righteous are right, but the counsels of the wicked are deceitful. And so information or counseling, or I would say counseling, but advice and that kind of thing that come from wicked people is deceitfulness, right? You want to get around something, you want to do this or you want to do that, you need to go this way. And probably all of us, or most of us anyways, are guilty of the attitude of better to ask for forgiveness than for permission. That's not necessarily the right way to do it. So, we don't want to be deceitful in what we do, and we want to be right. We want to be righteous. The words of the wicked are lie in wait for blood, so sabotage or murder, but the mouth of the upright will deliver them. The wicked one, I keep saying that, the wicked are overthrown and are no more, but the house of the righteous will stand. Again, there's that answer to the question that we saw often in Psalms and kind of alluded to even in a couple chapters ago in Proverbs, and probably in our own heart. Why do the wicked seem to prosper? Why do those who have set themselves against God, or even those who seek to twist God's word to their own favor, why does it seem like they get away with it, or like they're going to prosper from what they're doing? And God tells us here, they're no more. They're overthrown. Eventually, they're overthrown. They're not going to get away with it. And we need to rest on that and just kind of commit them to God's hands and not worry so much about what they're doing, I guess. But the house of the righteous will stand. So if you seek to be righteous before God, you have a relationship with God, you've asked him to forgive you of your sin, you believe that you call him Lord, you believe that he's been raised from the dead, you're part of the house that will stand forever. You're part of his house. A man will be condemned according to his wisdom, but he who is perverse, Oh, whoops. I wondered where that was going. I'm having real trouble reading tonight. A man will be commended according to his wisdom. Goodness. But he who is of a perverse heart will be despised. Man will be commended according to his wisdom. But he who is of a perverse heart, somebody who wants to twist everything and again, bring lies and all, that will be despised. And again, we're going to see, as we get into this a little more in these two chapters, the perverse person or the wicked person tends to run their mouth a lot. They tend to talk a lot, and especially about themselves, and eventually they reveal their plans and they reveal who they are. And that would lead to this being despised by those who have to live around them. Better is the one who is slighted, but has a servant, than he who honors himself, but lacks bread. Right? So it's been kind of compared to those who don't seem to have a lot, and yet they have a servant. They can still, in this case, employ someone or have somebody else that they can take care of. So, I mean, if you have a servant, you're not just taking care of yourself. You have another mouth to feed as well. But he who honors himself but lacks bread, how long does that last? Who promotes themselves but has nothing to back it up? Or somebody who is slighted because he just kind of keeps to himself, doesn't really put himself out there, doesn't really self-promote at all. But he has responsibility, and he has others to take care of, and he's able to do that. And God is saying here, better is that person than the one who promotes himself like he has a lot. I think we saw that, and it's still true today, but I think we saw that a lot in the 90s, especially with all the credit cards, and when they came out and everybody was spending like they had money in the bank, and instead of, hey, I'm just creating a debt I'm never going to pay back, never going to be able to pay back. And they go out and, it was really rampant in the military among all the single guys that are just out of high school. First real paycheck they had, man, their rooms, their apartments, or whatever, were full of stereo equipment and their first nice shiny car that they had, and they owed all of this, and before you know it, they're in the first sergeant's office because people are calling and wanting their money, and they just keep spending money. They don't know how to pay bills. They were never really taught how to take care of things. Thought if they had a checkbook and it was still full of checks, they still had money in the bank. And, I don't know, they thought that the checkbook would disappear when the money ran out. I don't know what they were thinking, but it was that kind of attitude. And it was this kind of thing. Better to be, just one who kind of keeps to himself and keeps back and is diligent at what he's doing and lives a life of just below his means. Actually, would be even better, because then you have some to save. But definitely not living above your means. And then trying to promote that like it's a good thing. Verse 10, a righteous man regards the life of his animal, but the tender mercies of the wicked are cruel. And so probably the thought in the day would be more toward a work animal like an ox than a dog. We would, be really easy for people to apply this to their house pets and their dogs and their cats and all of that. But that really wasn't much of a thing back then. Those were animals that, you might have to guard your family, but those often were just wild or feral animals. But an ox was valuable. It was how a man plowed his field and made his money and fed his family, and so he cared for that. And a righteous man regards the life. He makes sure the animal's fed, taken care of, all the responsibilities of doing that, the equipment that he would use with the animal to be able to plow and all that it fit right, and the animal did its work in as much comfort as it could. Where the tender mercies of a wicked person are cruel. And keeping that even toward an animal, the tender mercies of a wicked person, in their mind, it's merciful that I'm only beating you instead of beating you to death, kind of thing with their animals. You don't want to be cruel to animals of any kind, not even our house pets and that kind of thing. But this was probably more toward that beast of burden, kind of the ox or the mule or something that brought considerable more value to the family. And I'm not, again, trying to diminish dogs and cats too much. I know they're valuable and most of the time, like the value I have in a cat is probably not the same as most cat owners. My cat has value if it's killing the chipmunks and the mice and keeping the rats out of the house, and then it's a valuable animal. And I've got 2 male cats that are outside only cats, and man, they walk with me when I go do the chores. They walk out to the goats with me. They walk to the chickens and the ducks with me, and they roll over and think I need to stop and pet them, and but that's my relationship with that animal. I take care of them. I make sure they have a little bit of food. I'm not going to let them starve or, oh, I've seen 2 chipmunks in the yard today, so I must be feeding them too much. That's kind of where I'm at with that. Get rid of them rodents so they don't cause damage. But so for me with a cat, that's a working relationship. I can handle those kind of cats. But the ones that are going to be inside the house and rubbing on me all the time, and I'm like, come on, you're just petting yourself. You don't want me to pet you. And I'm more of a dog person, but anyways, I don't want to get into all that. I didn't mean to open that can of worms. You just take care of your animals. I'm not liberal, PETA person. It's not like the guy who took care of an ox never butchered a lamb for his family. They did, and so it's not really about that. It's just if you're going to have animals, you have a responsibility for their life, and you need to make it as good as you can. He who tills his land will be satisfied with bread, but he who follows frivolity is devoid of understanding. And I think that at least one of the commentators thinks that this is kind of one of the, somebody who's tilling the land is putting work into the land. It takes time. There's an investment there. There's effort and some sweat equity, we might say, in the land, and in hopes of a harvest and all of that. And the promise here, if you're tilling your land and you're doing what you need to do, you're planting it right and all of that, then you're satisfied with bread. You're going to be satisfied with something to eat. But a person who maybe has that get-rich-quick mentality is always waiting for the mother lode to come in and complains when they're hungry. It's kind of the thing here. And they're just devoid of understanding. Verse 12 says, the wicked covet the catch of evil men, but the root of the righteous yields fruit. Right, so the wicked covet the catch of evil men. They don't care whether it's good or bad. They just want what somebody else has. And if they watch an evil person or somebody who's gaining because of evil or because their ways are evil, they're okay with that, and they're more than okay with it. They're willing to even use the same tactics, and even maybe use the same tactics on the person that they're coveting against to begin with, in order to take what he's accumulated in an evil way. But the root of the righteous yields fruit. But if you're going to be righteous and you're going to do your live your life according to God's word, you're going to put the effort into it. You're going to have a good foundation. You're going to yield good fruit. It's not just it's not mealy fruit or bad apples or whatever. You're going to produce something that's good and nutritious in the sense of the picture that's being painted here. I had another thought to that, but it has escaped me. So let's press on. Verse 13, the wicked is ensnared by the transgression of his lips, but the righteous will come through trouble. Right? And so there you have, we're getting into that using your mouth too much. The wicked is ensnared by the transgression of his lips. If somebody talks a lot, you just kind of let them keep talking, because sooner or later they're gonna fall into the own hole they're digging there, but a righteous person comes through trouble, and the kind of the picture I get is sometimes you have to get through some trouble. We live up here in the northern part of the country, and we don't maybe get as much snow as northern Michigan does, but we get snow, and we're close to Lake Michigan, so we get winds and that kind of thing in the winter. And I still have to go out and brave that and be in that to take care of animals, and it's actually kind of satisfying to get out and get in that and get something accomplished, even though it's troublesome. You might get cold. I find that the older I am, the faster I get cold out in that stuff. So, but it's still good. It's still good to be out in and be able to face trouble and get through it, and you do so by being righteous and one step at a time. You're not worried about get rich quick, and you're not worried about. You don't have time to talk about it. You just go out and do it. It says a man will be satisfied with good by the fruit of his mouth, and the recompense of a man's hands will be rendered to him. So a man will be satisfied with good by the fruit of his mouth. Again, you're talking about somebody who's maybe thinks before he speaks. What he's speaking and the words that he's using are well thought out. He has a plan to get things done or whatever. He's not just a know-it-all who's running his mouth and doesn't really know what he's doing. And you'll be rewarded. Will be rewarded for that. The way of the fool is right in his own eyes, but he who heeds counsel is wise. A fool's wrath is known at once, but a prudent man covers shame. And so we've seen this one played out, especially if you've raised teenagers. The way of the fool is right in his own eyes. They're always right. Somebody who's foolish, somebody who doesn't have any life experience or doesn't know or doesn't care to know, and I think that's what the rest of it kind of implies, they're always right in their own eyes. Doesn't matter what anybody says, they're always right. Even if you can prove they're wrong, they're still right. Somehow, in their mind, they were still right. But he who heeds counsel is wise. So if you start off in a direction or you start off with an explanation, but somebody can correct you, and you take the correction, you listen, then you're a wise person. You need to save yourself steps. You'll save yourself effort. You can always tell when you go into a job, especially a job that's a labor job, somebody who knows why you do what you do and not just how to do what you do, isn't looking for all the shortcuts in the actual job, but they have figured out ways to save you steps. Not steps in the process necessarily, but physical steps. When you go here, you grab this and this, so you don't have to go back and get it again. So you're saving time, you're saving steps, your effort and all that, but you're still going through the actual process, where a fool is like, just cut corners any way you can, and sometimes you let things go through that aren't quite finished right or whatever. and so the fool's wrath, and then the fool's wrath is known at once, and a prudent man covers shame. So a fool's wrath, what's the first thing out of their mouth when they've been exposed? That's not fair. Or, judge not. Don't judge me. Well, I don't have to judge you. You opened your mouth and judged yourself. I mean, I don't have to. But, if they're right in their own eyes, and when they get busted out on it, and they, instead of backing down and receiving the correction, their wrath just comes out. Who do you think you are? Kind of thing, right? But a prudent man covers shame. Oh man, I messed up. I'm sorry. Let's press on. We're not going to sit and beat it to death. I'm not going to argue with why I think I was right or why it should be the way I think it is. I saw that a lot working in with some younger people in the last 20 years, where they don't like the way that has been established to do a job, and they're not going to do it. They don't think they should have to. And when they're caught and called out on it, the wrath comes out, rather than being kind of taking the shameful attitude or an attitude of apology and being able to be corrected. And when you do that, you cover shame. Because if you're going to argue with people who know the job and know better, you're going to argue with the supervisor who knows the process, then you're just going to have you're just letting more of yourself out there to be put to shame and to be embarrassed, and that's the other thing. They don't generally know they should even be embarrassed. They just keep on going. They don't even know that they should be embarrassed of their own words. But again, a prudent man says, all right, I'll self-correct here and correct according to the instruction you've given me. And the job goes on, and you're not put to open shame because you don't know how to shut your mouth. Verse 17, he who speaks truth declares righteousness, but a false witness deceit. And it's the false witness is with intent. Right? So you're intending, when it says with deceit, you're not a false witness as in you made a mistake or you read something wrong, you read a situation wrong, and you jumped to the wrong conclusion. This is purposely, willfully trying to deceive. That's a false witness. But he who speaks truth declares righteousness. Now, you could take that verse and put that in with Jude and the false teachers within the church. You know, I listen to people and I want to be the same, give grace. Like, you know, maybe they've been brought up into it, and so they're repeating the same offenses that parents have repeated, or, you know, if they're in the ministry, they're repeating what other people have put into them and what they've taught them, and they don't really know. But I think more often than not, and especially in this day, it's on purpose. It's on purpose. I won't say every time it's on purpose, but more often than not, it's on purpose that they're trying to deceive people. You know, they often know they know the word because they know how to get around it. They know verses to throw out there to kind of throw you off their trail and or whatever, and redirect and make themselves look good. But I forgot where I was even at. No, verse 17. But one who's trying to declare truth is trying to declare righteousness. If you can read and teach out of the Bible and not be afraid of what God has said, but be rather like what we've been going through in Proverbs, willing to receive the instruction and then pass it along to others, and you are heading toward righteousness rather than selfishness and self-promotion, self-satisfaction. I don't know. I just see a lot that I'm like, nope. You know, there have been a couple, and I'm not willing to throw names out just yet, but there have been a couple that I've been following now for the last couple of years, and it's been becoming more and more obvious to me as I look in and I listen to them. It's not just listening to people who are talking about them. It's, you know, actually listening to what they have to say, listening to interviews, listening to and, you know, they don't give interviews to people who don't like them or who disagree with them. So you know it's an interview that they like to give, and or a teaching that they've given. And you know, it's one of the two guys especially is becoming very obvious. There's a bit of a Messiah complex there, and I'm going, dude, these are the same kinds of things that Jim Jones said. These are the same kinds of things that David Koresh said. Having a deeper understanding from God that you don't have yet and you don't experience yet, and I know, and secrets from God and all of this, and these things have been revealed to me, and someday if you press in hard enough and long enough, you'll get to this point too. And I'm like, oh my word. So now you know what I torture myself with in my free time. more than I should. But anyways, it is deceitfulness, and it's a false witness, and it's with intent. There is one who speaks like the piercings of a sword, but the tongue of the wise promotes death. So those cutting words, those words that are meant to wound people, that's what that piercings of the sword is. There's one who speaks like that. But the tongue of the wise promotes health, so brings healing. So often what you'll find in meeting with people or counseling people, relationship type counseling, what you'll find is somebody in that relationship or somebody who's influenced a person did it with very cutting, hard words, wounded that person, beat them down with their words. But now it's on you to be a wise person who promotes the health, who bandages those wounds up and gives wisdom and counsel and helps that person to heal and move on with life. Verse 19, the truthful lip shall be established forever, but a lying tongue is but for a moment. And there's that whole, I know there's those who deceive, and they deceive on purpose. They're not going to get away with it. And the Lord has to remind me of that a lot. Deceit is in the heart of those who devise evil. But counselors of peace have joy. No grave trouble will overtake the righteous, but the wicked shall be filled with evil. That's kind of a, should cause us, the first part of 21 there should cause us to think about the words Jesus said, be of good cheer, I have overcome the world. John chapter 16. Yeah, you'll have troubles or tribulations, but be of good cheer, for I have overcome the world. In this world you'll have tribulation. Anyways, we need to remember that we won't be just overtaken by the troubles of this world. And ultimately, in the grand scheme of things, it could look like to everybody else in the world that the Christians are overtaken by the troubles of this world, but we have a hope that is not in this world. And so even if you want to take it to the ultimate, very just extreme circumstance, the ultimate answer is eventually, one of these days, we're moved from this life here on earth to the life with Christ forever in his presence, absent from the body is to be present with the Lord forever. So we just change places. We don't really die. And that helps, that should help. Again, Philippians, especially chapter 4, talks about anxiety and talks about, kind of being overcome with that, but it tells us how to overcome that and how to put our trust in the Lord and that the God of peace will be with us. Verse 22, lying lips are an abomination to the Lord, but those who deal truthfully are his delight. And that again is another good verse for me with the kind of the research I've been doing and try not to get angry. I couldn't even teach about these people right now. I couldn't even share what I'm seeing too much, especially not in the form of a sermon and, something that would be recorded and shared, because it makes me mad. And, this isn't yelling at the TV mad. This is stirring something up inside of me that is just not good for me to have. And I have to... I have to remember they are against God. They've set themselves against God. They're purposely deceitful, and I just need to deal in the truth. And this is my job, to show truth. And I can't be wrapped up in what they're, I have to be able to eventually give warning about this, but that can't be everything that I study. For my own health of my own heart and my ability to lead a church and to lead a family and to be a grandfather, I have to be able to just deal with the truth of God in my life and not worry so much about the deceitfulness in their life. I mean, I can pray against it, and I hope that God stops the ears of anybody who would hear him. And eventually, again, I think eventually I have to say something specific. But right now, I'm not in a great place with it to be able to do that without being completely angry about it. So pray for me. Pray for me, because I don't necessarily think we need to always be outing everybody in every sermon and whatever, but there's a huge concern because of the popularity of some of these people that there needs to be more warnings than there are about them. Anyways, A prudent man conceals knowledge, but the heart of a fool proclaims foolishness. So that's that. Better to be quiet and be thought a fool than to open your mouth and remove all doubt. Don't run your mouth. Just, you have knowledge of something. And maybe that's what I'm trying to learn, or what God's trying to teach me right now. You have knowledge. Just be quiet for right now. You have the knowledge. Wait till you have the heart to go with the knowledge, and then you can. But the heart of a fool just proclaims foolishness. The hand of the diligent will rule, but the lazy man will be put to forced labor. Right? And again, if you raise teenagers, you've kind of employed this probably, or have seen it employed in their life. The hand of the diligent will rule, and the lazy man will be put to forced labor. You have a choice. You can get up and go do this because you're part of the family and because you're willing to take on some responsibility, or you can get up and do it anyways, whether you want to or not. You entered that choice. You make the choice. You're going to be lazy and be forced to do it, or you want to just get up and get responsibilities taken care of. 25, the anxiety in the heart of man causes depression, but a good word makes it glad. So we've talked a lot about anxiety last year and how fear and anxiety were really pushed and promoted, and they still are. Seeing these things about not enough people are vaccinated, and we're only at 67%, and not going to hit 70% by the 4th of July, and we could have another wave now, and by the way, there's another variant that's really, really bad, but if you're fully vaccinated, you're okay. I'm like, come on. We haven't had a vaccine for a cold virus because we couldn't keep up with the variants. But now if you have this vaccine, anyways, now you know where I stand on that. But it's, come on. You're just promoting fear and anxiety. That's where that is. If it's truth, just say it and let it stand or fall where it is. If it's true, it's true. If it's not, man, quit trying to manipulate with fear and anxiety all the time. You're making it worse on people. We know that suicides went up last year. So you're pushing it. And again, if you want to overcome fear and anxiety, you go to Philippians chapter 4, and he tells us, he gives a whole list of things for us to think on, the things that are lovely and pure and all of that, the things that honor God, and the God of all peace will be with you. You want peace from God? Think on the things of God. It really is. You do have to be careful about what you think about. Are you gonna just think about things that are fearful all the time? And it's not that you ignore realities of things. So I'm not saying, in that particular case that there's no virus, but in a different example, I'm the kind of person that would lay awake for a few minutes at night and think, man, what if the house caught on fire? If I hear of somebody else's house being on fire, if I hear, of some other calamity, how would I get everybody out? And it's not, oh my goodness, I'll never be able to get everybody out. I actually start thinking about, and I plan out. Where would I move from this spot? Who would I wake up first? Which way would I send them if it was here? And because I know my home. I know where things would be more likely for that to happen. So I have a plan. I have a plan to get to everybody. I have let everybody else kind of know my plan without making everything fearful for everybody. And so, excuse me, that's not anxiety. I'm not laying awake at night and just can't sleep because, I'm worried that if the house caught on fire, we would all die. That's not it at all. It's how do I get out? Whose room am I going to hit first when it comes to the kids? What's the best plan of action? That's not the same thing as, oh my goodness, we'd lose everything and everybody's going to, Not the same thing at all. But to be in anxiety all the time, to worry about, we lose it all, the house will be gone, kids will be gone, everybody, you're being kind of selfish, because if you think everybody's gone but you, you only got a plan for you. but you know, again, there's a lot. There's unemployment levels when they go up. Oh my goodness, if I lose my job, and I've been through that, 10 years on a job, and hey, you just made it, and here are the details of your retirement pay when you get to 62 or whatever it is. Oh, by the way, tomorrow's your last day of work. So it was almost exactly that close. It was 1 month I celebrated my 10-year mark, and so I get all of my paperwork for my retirement benefits when I can get it all done and all of that, and knowing that it was literally only a few weeks and I wasn't going to even have a job. I still get eligible for the retirement, but there was 25 more years of work, or 30, or not 25, but yeah, 20 more years of work to go before I got to that. All that pay in between there is gone, right? I could have been very anxious and full of anxiety over that, and it's not that there weren't days that there wasn't, but I didn't let it wreck my life to depression. But even as a kid, I was somebody who struggled with that anxiety, and I can go there. I can still go there as an adult. I have to fight against it and kind of beat it back, and not let myself get into that depression. And this is but a good word makes it glad. A good word makes a heart glad. So you want a good word? Get in the Bible. Let God remind you of who He is and what you are and who you are to Him. The righteous should choose his friends carefully, for the way of the wicked leads them astray. And there's a warning to the righteous. That's not even a warning to the wicked. That's an assumption on the wicked. You're gone astray. You're going to go astray. The righteous need to choose your friends carefully. We probably all heard that from our parents. Be careful of who you're with. Because it doesn't matter if you're a part of whatever they're doing. If you're with them, you're responsible too. Lazy man does not roast what he took in hunting, but diligence is a man's precious possession. And so the example here is somebody who spent time hunting down his food, putting all the effort into it, all the planning into it, where you're going to go, how you're going to hunt, how the hunt's going to go, what animals you're looking for, or animal you're looking for. And, there is a certain satisfaction being a deer hunter of being able to put myself in a position to take an animal, and then all the effort that goes into preserving that, and in this case, roasting the animal, probably was part of the preservation, whether it was drying it out, slow roast that dried it out to like jerky so they could maintain it longer, or just making sure it didn't go to waste, period. They took what they took and then they had to eat it. So, but the diligence is man's precious possession. And there are, speaking from the perspective of a hunter, there are parts of that animal that only me and people I really like get to have. They're not big, but man, they're good. There's the loin on the outside, but inside that backbone, there's that little tenderloin that's not very big on a whitetail deer, and you don't share that with very many people. In the way of righteousness is life, and in its pathway there is no death. Again, in the way of righteousness there is life, and in its pathway there is no death. And we know that. If you're a born-again believer in Jesus, you know that. Setting aside all of the other things, the the words about being lazy or being diligent, the words about lying or telling the truth, being foolish and being wise. The way of righteousness is life, and in its pathway there is no death. So what are we pursuing? Are we pursuing righteousness, or are we pursuing selfishness? Right? Are we looking to honor God with our lives, in our conduct? Do we search out His Word to know what that means, and to truly know the God that we serve? Are we full of self, and we're going to do what we're going to do, and we're going to find the loopholes in the Bible, so we, like it's some kind of tax code? What are we searching for? That's pretty clear, right? So to walk in the ways of righteousness is life. If we're right before God and we're right with God, then we know there is no death for us. Again, we pass from this life to the next life. We're not going to ever be completely dead. And, the same is said even for the wicked person. It's just not life in that it's not life with Jesus. It's not that everlasting life, the one that's treasured and cherished and hoped for. It's death in that it's permanent separation in eternity and condemnation. But in the pathway of righteousness, there's no death. It's not something that we fear. Now we could again have the anxieties and whatever day to day we struggle with that, but knowing that Jesus has overcome the world, and in Him we can be overcomers. In that we can beat those things back. Right? We don't walk in anxiety. We don't walk in fear all the time. And here's where some of the disciples would twist it. They'd skip over righteousness and just say we walk in life. No joke. And I've watched them do, not with this particular verse, but I've listened to them say those things. And they completely want to skip over righteousness because that implies effort. And to walk in righteousness implies that you have to make correct decisions. You have to not just make the decision, but you have to carry it out. There's a lot implied in walking in righteousness or being in the way of righteousness. It's not just God has made you righteous and now you can do whatever you want. That's not walking in the way of righteousness. That's, at best, being a prodigal child. And we know the story. When he was walking contrary to his father, he ended up in a pig pen eating pig slop and decided that even being a servant in his father's house was better than what he was doing at that point, and went home. So it's not just we walk in life, or our pathway is filled with life, but is the way of righteousness. That decision to submit to the Lord, to change your life, to transform you into something new, to change the way you think, and to walk in His way, that's life. That's life. And if you think there's no adventure in that, try it for a little while. Try walking contrary to the world and find out. There's a lot of adventure in trying to walk in righteousness. And there's a lot of excitement in that because people will oppose you all over the place. But you can walk in that with the understanding that there is no death. There is no separation from God anymore in that pathway. In that pathway is life and not death. Now, I thought we would get to 13. That was my plan. And I thought we had enough time, but I didn't move as fast as I thought I would. So, it's really tempting to keep going, but let's stop. Let's stop here and not move faster than the Lord wants me to. Father, thank you for your word and for your encouragement in our life. Lord, I pray that we would remember that we have been set on the path of righteousness and that we know where our life is and that it is in you and it's in honoring you, our Lord and our King. It's not walking contrary to your word. It's not trying to make your word say things that it doesn't say. It's not in promoting ourselves or thinking more of ourselves. It is learning how to be holy because our Heavenly Father is holy. And so, Lord, thank you for the instruction. And I pray that everybody who would hear this would set their heart toward receiving your instruction from your word and begin to live a transformed life for everybody to see. And that they would begin to experience, truly experience the life that you have set before them. And walking down that path that leads right straight to your throne. Thank you, Lord, for all that you've done for us. And for calling us to you. In Jesus' name, amen.